Taiwan, I'm Tiffany Wong with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. One of Taiwan's biggest showcases of military power and innovation has opened in Taipei. On display, cutting-edge weapons made in Taiwan, alongside new collaborations with international partners. Alan Liu was at the opening and brings us this report.
Here at the Taipei Aerospace and Defense Industry Exhibition, Taiwan is showing off some serious firepower. One big reveal this year is the Chang'e missile defense system. Military officials say it can shoot down targets at altitude of more than 70 kilometers. The Chang'e missile is Taiwan's domestically developed anti-ballistic system, with the ability to take down targets higher than even the U.S. Patriot PAC-3.
那目前我有这套系统，就是我国首套自制的中高层，能够在更高层的空域针对敌的战术弹道飞弹来予以拦截。
Taiwan has also been strengthening its aerial defense capabilities. One of the country's leaders in this area, the Aerospace Industrial Development Corp, is showcasing an indigenous counter-drone system that uses so-called soft kill features, such as electronic warfare to jam incoming drones, as well as hard kill options that actually shoot drones down.
那其实现在随着无人机的发展，其实有慢慢的有越来越多的无人机，它有抗干扰的功能，所以其实你软杀其实会有对很多无人机是没有作用的。这也是为什么我们会去发展硬杀系统。
Also on display are small unmanned surface vessels from the U.S. meant to defend against a sea attack. They're not only low cost, they can also be equipped with surveillance gear for patrol and reconnaissance. They can also carry warheads to strike enemy ships, covering general patrols and high-intensity sea control missions. This year's defense exhibition features more than 400 companies from around the world. Beyond high-tech displays, it also showcases Taiwan's strive for self-reliance and its deepening ties with international partners. Fu Huahong and Alan Liu in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's cabinet has rolled out a series of amendments to better protect its undersea cables and pipelines.
包括通讯、电力、自来水、天然气还有气象缆线等，为攸关民众生活权益国家安全之重要基础设施。为我们的海缆很容易受到自然灾害跟人为破坏，所以必须要来加强保护。
The cabinet says the draft was prompted by cases of cable sabotage linked to China in recent years. It lays out punishments for sabotage and adds two preventative measures to existing laws. The first would allow authorities to seize vessels suspected of sabotage or loitering at commercial ports. The second would require all vessels transiting the Taiwan Strait to identify themselves through an automated system. The draft amendments would need legislative approval to become law. The U.S. State Department said earlier this week that it is reinvigorating its partnerships with the Pacific Islands. The announcement comes as China seeks to deepen its influence in the region. Our reporter Cadence Carranza talks to Australian National University's Graham Smith to find out more about why the U.S. is doing this and what it could mean for Taiwan.
The U.S. held a roundtable meeting with Pacific Island nations this week, and in a statement afterwards, outlined a number of ways that they're aiding the region. What is the U.S.'s motivation in reaffirming their commitment to Pacific Island states right now?
I think, this administration has a certain logic to it, and it seemed that there wasn't much in the Pacific that would attract the current administration. It's just not a wealthy region, and that seems to be where the attention of this administration is focused. So I think in some ways it's serving to reassure that, at least on a certain level, America is still keen to be involved.
A key U.S. interest in the Pacific is countering China's influence. How does U.S. involvement in this region help do that?
So there's two Pacifics. There's the Northern Pacific, the COFA states, so the Compact of Free Association states, which are Palau, Federated States of Micronesia, and the Marshall Islands. And these are states which the US has extremely close relationships with. And in exchange for access to the US Social Security and essentially being sort of US citizens, these countries give the US military full access to their territorial waters. So they have a very close relationship. So in the event of a conflict with Taiwan, China having a conflict with Taiwan, If that were to be the case, in most scenarios, the US fleet would have to travel through the Northern Pacific, and having unimpeded access to these waters and having bases in the case of the Marshall Islands and other facilities in the case of Palau, that would be of great benefit to the American military effort.
In the last few years, we've seen several of Taiwan's former diplomatic allies in the region cut ties with Taipei in favor of Beijing. I'm wondering if you think the U.S. showing their commitment to Pacific Island states will have any effect on Taiwan's ability to keep its 3 remaining diplomatic allies in the region.
When these countries switch, it's usually involving Chinese companies making plays, Chinese companies influencing local politicians, and this will continue to go on. No matter how many agreements America signs, no matter how many talks they have, China will still be in there doing what it can to advance its interests. That's just the nature of how the game is played. So yeah, this will not make it impossible for China to make inroads, but certainly it will be welcomed in the 3 COFA states.
That was Graham Smith, Senior Fellow at the Australian National University. As U.S. President Donald Trump makes a state visit to the UK, U.S. tech companies have announced a flood of investment into the country, including in AI. John Van Trieste has this report.
U.S. President Donald Trump and Britain's King Charles III enter a hall at Windsor Castle where a lavish banquet awaits. Protests against Trump's second state visit to the UK haven't made a dent in a day full of pomp and gravitas, with Trump and Charles stressing the close bond their countries share.
We're joined by history and fate, and by love and language, and by transcendent ties of culture, tradition, ancestry, and destiny. We're like 2 notes in one chord, or 2 verses of the same poem, each beautiful on its own, but really meant to be played together.
So in renewing our bond tonight, we do so with unshakable trust in our friendship and in our shared commitment to independence and liberty.
But amid this lavish reception, there's business to be done. The US and UK are signing a tech partnership with major investments in areas including AI. And during the trip, news has come out that a wave of US tech investment is heading for the UK, with $30 billion coming from Microsoft alone. Nvidia's Jensen Huang and OpenAI's Sam Altman are in the UK too, and both companies will likely soon announce hefty investments into UK data centers. Huang is particularly optimistic about the prospects of AI in the UK.
Don't forget, this is the home of the origins of artificial intelligence, and some of the brightest minds in artificial intelligence are here. And so the expertise of creating artificial intelligence and creating and training large language models is deep here.
UK officials see a bright future ahead too, despite some concerns of how well the UK will be able to maintain so-called AI sovereignty given the prevalence of American tech.
This deal does what it says on the tin. We are gaining from this, not giving anything up. We are going to get the investment we need to create the infrastructure and from there absolutely turbocharge our economy.
And so new high-tech jobs could soon be arriving on British shores. Foreign policy differences between Washington and London remain, as do US tariffs on British products. But in tech at least, there are signs an old bond is holding. Chris Ma and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Nvidia is facing fresh trouble in China, where regulators are tightening limits on its chips just as the company pushes to increase its presence in the Chinese market. As Chris Gorin reports, the regulatory move is seen by some as a negotiating tactic in US-China trade talks.
China's internet regulator has reportedly told the country's biggest tech firms to stop buying Nvidia's AI chips, Beijing's strongest push yet to break reliance on US chips. Companies such as ByteDance and Alibaba have been told to end testing and halt orders of Nvidia's RTX Pro 6000D, an AI chip designed to comply with US export controls for China. The Financial Times says Chinese firms had planned to buy tens of thousands of those chips, but officials now argue domestic processors can match Nvidia's China-only models. Nvidia stock ended down 2.6% on Wednesday on the news, and some analysts say the impact to Nvidia's bottom line could be significant.
Nvidia's total sale to China still accounts for about 13% of its total sales in 2024. I would say it will be bigger than what we see before, just relying on export control, because it's cutting off the demand from China.
Nvidia's CEO, Jensen Huang, in London as part of a business delegation with US President Donald Trump, said, "We can only be in service of a market if a country wants us to be. I'm disappointed with what I see, but they have larger agendas to work out between China and the United States." It's the latest hit to Nvidia's China push, which has seen setbacks to exports of its H20 chip from both Washington and Beijing. Chinese authorities on Monday said Nvidia violated antitrust laws, putting more pressure on the company. It all comes ahead of a planned phone call between US President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping on Friday. Some analysts see the moves by both sides as negotiating tactics for wider trade talks.
It's a kind of a new era for export control policy for sure, because before that, it mostly still based on strategic interest, national security. So blending export control with trade talks is a trend that we see more and more in the recent years.
With this latest move from Beijing, the stakes for Nvidia, US-China tech ties, and the global AI race are rising fast. Alex Chun and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
The U.S. Federal Reserve has cut interest rates by 0.25 percentage points, the first reduction since last December.
In support of our goals and in light of the shift in the balance of risks, today the Federal Open Market Committee decided to lower our policy interest rate by 0.25 percentage point.
The cut brings the main lending rate down to between 4 and 4.25%. Officials signal they'll continue lowering borrowing costs through the rest of this year. Analysts say the challenge has been finding a balance. Lowering rates too quickly could drive prices up, but keeping them too high risks driving unemployment.
It is a risk management cut, but at the same time, because the Fed is likely to be cutting rates again in October and December, it's an effort to put a floor underneath a cooling job market and thereby reduce the risk of recession.
Taiwan's stock market surged after the Fed decision. The central bank is scheduled to hold a meeting on Thursday to determine its latest monetary policy. U.S. legislators are expressing concerns about a proposed deal to transfer the social media app TikTok to U.S. ownership. U.S. House China Committee Chair John Moolenaar says that under the new agreement, TikTok would still rely on algorithms and other apps provided by the China-based firm ByteDance. It comes after the Trump administration announced a framework deal on Tuesday to keep TikTok operating in the U.S. by transferring its U.S. assets to a consortium of companies. Senator Richard Blumenthal also weighed in, warning that any deal would need to safeguard national security. TikTok has not responded to any questions about the proposal. Taiwan is set to buy $10 billion worth of farm goods from the United States within 4 years.
It's about 25% increase compared to past 5 years. And this is very important, the one step forward.
A group of Taiwanese agriculture representatives were in Washington to sign the deal, which covers soybeans, wheat, corn, and beef. Agriculture Minister Chen Junji says Taiwan hopes buying more high-quality U.S. goods will encourage Washington to lower tariffs on Taiwanese products. But he said the purchases are really driven by market demand. The move is already drawing positive reactions from some U.S. lawmakers.
We have to open markets, and we want to thank people from Taiwan, your officials and your business people that are here with you to sign these agreements. It's very, very important that we do what we can to get markets overseas.
The Taiwan delegation's 13-day trip will include visits to farming communities in a number of U.S. states. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, we leave you with more images of the Taipei Aerospace and Defense Technology Exhibition. I'm Tiffany Wong. Take care and see you next time.
For more stories from Taiwan and Expo 2025, download the TaiwanPlus app.